All right, hey everyone, we are back. It is another Coffee Talks with myself and David Perzin. David, dare I ask how your week has been?
I appreciate that you would ask, Dan. I just realized it's called Coffee Talks. I don't even drink coffee, and I
Me
don't even
neither.
have a drink with me. No, I mean, you don't either?
No, this was your idea. This was your name, David.
Okay, you know what? You're right about that. I was trying to come off a coughing thing, and I think I was actually having a coughing attack, and I had a
There we
coughing
go.
character in me, and I was having a lozenge or something. But yeah, so really good week, Dan. Move right on. What do we got to talk about today? Lots of stuff. I know. I'm
We
so
do.
excited. I actually woke up for the broadcast.
We have a lot of stuff. First of all, let's mention we do have some social media accounts right now. We now have a Twitter, an Instagram, and a TikTok. On Twitter, we are Coffee Talks Poke. And on Instagram and TikTok, we are Coffee Talks Pokemon. I'll put those up on screen if you're watching this, and I'll put them in the description so you can click them. I will say the Twitter and the Instagram are going to get used a little bit more than the TikTok initially because I am still learning how to do TikTok videos and stuff, but it will be used pretty soon. There are some comments about that kind of thing this week, so I just wanted to get that out the way. And since a lot of comments have mentioned this, last week I did ask about people who listen versus watch these, and I think I scared a few people. So I just want to clarify there
By the
is
way, you
always
scared the heck out of me,
I
Dan. So
scared
I'm just
you.
one of them. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
no. Well, there is always going to be a video version of this on YouTube. My asking about it was just so I know that if we do decide to also go onto some audio only platforms, do the episodes still stand up on their own, or would I have to go through and, heavily edit them again? I just wanted to know that. But we are always going to have the YouTube videos, with the card images and stuff as the priority.
I'm relieved, Dan. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah. All right, so let's start out with the comments. First off, we have Pallet Town Pokemon. We asked Pallet Town Pokemon a question directly last week. Pallet Town Pokemon was the owner of the 2005 number one trainer, the Curran Hill one that got, the comment on it by CGC that they worked out where it came from. He had asked David how much he paid for the 2022 number one trainer. David said, "You have to share first what you paid for the 2005." Do you remember that you said that?
It rings a bell. I
It
do
rings
think
a
I said
bell.
that.
You do. So first of all, Palatine Pokemon said, "I didn't actually pay anything for mine. It was fully a trade. I traded about 25 cards to get it." And to which Dan, Catch 'em All Collectibles, said, "Well, can you tell us what the trade value was at? And then maybe it'll get David to share what he paid." And Palatine Pokemon came back and said, "It was anywhere between 80 and 100,000. They weren't able to tie down exact values on cards because there was a lot of CGC 9.5 cards in there. And for CGC, there isn't as much market data always. But they said they had anywhere between 80 and 100,000. So, David, would you like to now share what you paid for the 2022 number one trainer, if you remember?
I will absolutely do that. And I just want to say I thought it was really remarkable and great of Dan at Catch 'em All Collectibles to Catch 'em All Collectibles
Yeah.
to basically intermediary that whole situation and come up with a value.
Yeah.
Pallet Town, of course it's 80 to 100, but you might only have like $5,000-$10,000 in it or something. So I'm still gonna claim that I might have paid more, but my price out the door was 50. I paid 50 for the world's number one 2022 trophy card. Yeah.
Did that also included the champion stamped card as well, right? Or did you work out a separate value for that?
That was for both. That was for
That was
both.
for
Yeah.
both. Okay. And
Yeah.
to clarify again, so that was just the champion one. So people know that wasn't the full run of champion to 32. It was just the champion one. Because obviously we got the finalist down to top 32 from second place. So that 50,000 was for the two cards. And then we
Yeah.
have our answer.
Yes.
Dan at Catch 'em All Collectibles did also comment himself. He was talking about the idea of clickbait. We've talked a bit about in this podcast a few times about, clickbaiting and how do we get the more views. I'm not going to read out all of Dan's comments. Dan and Dave had a little bit of back and forth. And it is a very, very interesting comment from Dan, an interesting comment thread. But God, it would be boring to read out on a podcast. It's a nice breakdown of the idea of clickbait in terms of short form content, long form content. If that's your kind of thing, definitely go and read it. But I don't need to read it all out on here. And me and David have had some conversations about that behind the scenes as well.
I mean, what I thought was interesting about it, just very briefly, was that he had cited some statistics around clickbait actually being very useful.
Yeah,
Whether or not it's useful under this format is really the question. But I always
yeah, yeah.
appreciate the opportunity to learn and look at other people's evidence and experiences with these kinds of things. So thank you for taking the time to write about all that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely no argument that clickbait does work, but there is, I think, one thing Dan mentioned was levels of clickbait or tiers of clickbait, he maybe called it, and it's how if you're wanting people to engage with longer form, you have to have very mild, low-level clickbait, whereas if you're just wanting someone to watch a 1-minute video, you can go to the moon with how much you're clickbaiting it, because by the time they've clicked on it and realized, you've basically lied to them in the clickbait, the video's already done. Whereas we have to try and tease what's in the podcast, but we can't outright lie. We can't, try and make it more than it is. We just have to tease people so when they come in, they go, oh yeah, this is what I thought it would be. We'll stick around. But yeah, like I said, we've talked about that a lot behind the scenes. Let's not get into analyzing clickbait too much.
But why don't you tease more then? Why don't you just say like dumb old guy who knows nothing about Pokemon collection, and have like a guy crossing the road with a cane. That's pretty much what I am. And then, talks to historian, Pokemon historian, who lambaste him for his lack of knowledge. Can we do something like that?
We will be on stuff like the Twitter, the Instagram, the TikTok, which as I said, I'm in the process of getting those set up, because I don't think you realize, Dave, you're a co-host of this podcast. If this was my podcast and you were a guest one week, I would be blowing up the title of that with, David Persin, #1 English collection, blah, blah, blah. But you're a co-host. You're an integral part of this podcast, which is why we're going to hype you up like that on all of the social media pages. We're going to make sure that the podcast as a whole is referenced to you like that. But each individual episode title, we do need to tease what we actually talk about in the episode, just so people can distinguish them. But yeah.
All right.
That was
I won't have to do any more filming though, like just an hour and a half a week, right? Because I don't spend that much time out of the restroom these days. So
no, you don't have to do anything more. That was a very long time we spent not talking about clickbait. All right,
good.
Kid Turi says, listen to this on YouTube as a video. Love the topics you both hit on. I love how well DJ Gigabyte and Uncle Dave pair up with each other. Looking forward to the next one. Thank you. I think me and Dave do have a nice little back and forth.
I'm not saying nothing.
Next up, Pika Drew said, it just struck me after hearing you respond that you've only ever gotten rid of duplicates. I'm completing a Staff Champions Festival set, and I was told upon purchase of my 2018 that it came indirectly from David, Small World. So I'm guessing Pika Drew must have purchased from someone who had purchased from you in the past.
Yes! Selling Pokemon extras, duplicates. I've done it, and I will continue to do it. Thanks, Pikachu. That was nice. Yeah. I'm glad you enjoy it. Yeah.
Old School Pokemon came on next to say, I listen to the podcast in the background while working. Don't ever really look at your faces. That's fine. If we do go to the audio-only ones as well, you can enjoy them as much as you enjoy this. And he also said, regarding the views for the podcast, maybe you guys should post a short on David's YouTube channel mentioning the podcast. And I replied saying, yep, I'm very, very annoyed at myself that we didn't do that. There's a lot of suggestions that come up in the comments, some we'll see later, where it's like, okay, I am working on stuff behind the scenes. I'm one person and Laura helps me out, but Laura does have a full-time job, so the art and stuff works on Laura's timescale. But I am genuinely working on stuff behind the scenes. That Old School Pokemon suggested, putting a trailer on your existing YouTube channel, is just something we should have done weeks ago, and I am very, very annoyed at myself that we haven't, and we will be recording one of those after this podcast, and hopefully you will have already seen it on Dave's channel yesterday when you're hearing this. I'm not perfect.
No one's accusing you of being, Dan. Move right on.
Good. Next, Your Average Player says, I listen to both audio only and visual, both work fine. They said they have an overall pretty good bank of information in the hobby, so when you guys mention cards or items, they generally know what's being referred to, which I think that is kind of the audience we're aiming for. A lot of people who are just getting into the hobby probably aren't as interested in the topics we talk about as people who've been in the hobby for a while. So I think if it is working for that target audience, great. And the visuals are there. If the newer collectors or people who don't have as much knowledge do need to come and actually watch the videos, see the visuals, fine, they're there. But as long as we're hitting that target audience, great.
Dan, having said that, for the person that's just tuning in and they're brand new, please continue to watch. Sometimes Dan, he annoys both himself and others, so we want to be a public service announcement for the entire hobby. And I know eventually all the new folks are going to look to go back anyway. So please just don't worry about it. Don't judge, don't categorize, don't compartmentalize. Just watch.
Yeah, of course we don't. We want everyone to be able to watch, and like I said, that's why we do have the visuals as well. You know, newer collectors probably will need to watch the videos at some point, actually have a look at what we're talking about. But we do have that option. We're not trying to turn any of them away.
Dan, I'd like to refer back to a previous comment at this time and say that now I realize how annoyed you were at yourself. I'm a bit annoyed too. I'm
Yep,
I'm
that's fair.
exceedingly annoyed. I'm egregiously annoyed. I'm as annoyed as you are now about the whole situation. I just
Good.
choose to forgive for the moment, okay?
Okay, I can forgive other people. I can't forgive myself.
Okay, that's fair.
All right, NP Pokemon. Loved the show once again. I prefer to watch on the side as I do other stuff. I think that's a way that a lot of people watch YouTube podcasts. Is it'll be on a screen and they'll have the video up, but they will be doing something else. I know that I do that up for a lot of YouTube podcasts and YouTube, longer form content as well. I'll be sorting cards, whatever, so I can look up if necessary. But yeah, generally just listening. Also continues NP Pokemon. Even though I know most of the cards talked about, I like to see the reference images. I would think most general listeners would really like to see it as well. But it's good as a listen only if you need to. Yeah, like I said, we are always going to have the YouTube videos. I just needed to know whether I have to re-edit everything again, but I don't. As it sounds, I think we're good. Next one, JRM says, walked past you 3 or 4 times at Worlds last year, Dan, but was too nervous to say hi. First off, never be nervous about coming and saying hi to me. I always try to be very, very approachable. As long as I'm not actively running towards a bathroom, I will always stop and say hello, have a chat, whatever. When I first started reading that comment, I got about halfway through and I was like, oh no, is this going to say I tried to get your attention 3 or 4 times and you ignored me? Because I am the worst for that in public. I even have a friend, someone I've known for years, who was multiple times messaging me on Instagram during Worlds saying, hey, you just walked 3 feet away from me and I shouted out, hi, Dan, and you just blanked me like multiple times over the weekend. And I was like, yeah, I just have no awareness around me for a lot of the time. But hey, since last Worlds, I have started Adderall, so maybe I'm not going to be as bad at this World. But yeah, to anyone out there, if you see me at an event, never ever, like, please never be nervous to come and say hi to me. I'm always down to have a chat or whatever you want out of the situation. If you don't want to chat, if you just want to say hello and then walk away, I'm also fine for that.
And Dan, I don't go out in public much anymore, but if I were out in public, anybody knows they can approach me. And I will even, different than you, notwithstanding the whole Adderall situation,
Yeah.
I actually will hold my bathroom break because I think it's more important to talk to folks if they approach me and be respectful and kind. And then, I'll go after that. So I know that maybe you're not at that level yet, Dan, but keep working on it. There's techniques and there's sort of like Kegel exercises or whatever. You can kind of work all that stuff out in time, okay?
Okay. As I said, if I'm running to a bathroom, I'm not going to stop. If I'm casually walking to a bathroom, I'll stop and have a chat. If I,
Okay.
I, I'm lactose intolerant. If I'm running to a bathroom, you do not want me to stop and chat to you.
Okay, fine. I think it's TMI at this point, Dan, but at
Oh
least it
yeah.
makes
Oh,
sense. You're
this
being
is
transparent with everybody,
this
so
is so much worse than all the death talk in the previous episodes. People are going to be listening to this and saying, "I wish they'd talk about dying soon."
the nice part is we're still alive, so we can still have a chat about this stuff, which is good. So
Yes, we can. All right, next comment is from Laura McHugh. That is another one of my wife's aliases. McHugh was the first part of her maiden name. She said she liked Trainer Deck A or Trainer Deck B, the this or that game. We've got one of those coming up, I believe. She got a good laugh out of our opinions with the dogs. She said she really likes the way the cards look popped up on top of the coffee mug logo in the last episode, which is kind of blowing her own horn because she designed all of that. But I had originally planned to have the coffee logo there and then that to go away when a card came up, but I screwed up in the editing and had to do it a different way. And she says she likes it, so that's good. I love David's touching on condition of cards for sets. Dan mentioned that I tend to be okay with cards that are more beat up. She says having those cards makes her really happy. She thinks I am insane for how nice I want my cards to be, and people shouldn't be pressured to get better condition cards if they're not personally bothered. Very much agree on that one. I would never be telling anyone else they have to get conditions that they're not happy with. Um, I like what I like. I know you do as well,
and
David.
and she's one of the things you like, so it's sort of a nice, circular situation. Good, Dan.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes she's one of the things I like. She continues, a reminder, we all want an update on David's 2016 McDonald's collection. Well, I think you have an update for us, don't you, David?
Yeah, it's not looking good. So thanks to Craig, if he was the one, whoever was the one that pointed
Yeah,
out that
I think it was Craig
I
originally.
don't. Yeah, I don't. So it looks like I don't have it. Because I
Yeah,
went through and I saw a gap right there, and then I looked out on eBay, and it's interesting. I didn't see a 2016 specifically for sale. I saw a
right.
2016/17, which I
Yeah.
don't really understand what that means and would need further clarification.
So I
But I
think
did see.
16/17 is I think the 17 set, but I think because they're all reprints of cards from sets just with a new symbol, some of them may still have a 2016 copyright date. I'm not 100% sure. So it may be something to do with that. But I did also look on eBay and TCG Player as well, and I couldn't find any right now, just in the last 10 minutes when you told me you didn't have one before the podcast. But I think this is at the point where we're going to tag in Matthew Thompson, who hasn't left a comment this week, but I think does most of the time. Because Matty is based in the UK, so Matty has access to that European market a lot better than either of us do. So I think Matty is going to be now on the lookout for one, potentially three 2016 McDonald's sets, because I know I don't have it, and I don't think Laura does either, but hopefully we can get you your set without too much trouble, Dave.
And we still have to be aware that we have not yet confirmed actual existence, right? I
We
know
have
that you said,
I have
well,
photos of them.
oh, you do have the
Uh,
photos of them,
yes, because when you
and
said
you're sure they're 2016 and not 17, because I know
yes,
you said
because
you.
each McDonald's set has a different logo on it, like the expansion symbols of the regular sets. Each
Okay,
one does, because when you mentioned to me earlier, I was like, okay, I know that the information I'm looking at says that it was released in English. Let me now look into it. Because if you don't have it, let me look into it and double check. But I at least found photos. And TCG Player, when I said I couldn't find much, you can buy a damaged Pikachu on TCG Player right now, which is English, does have the symbol, and TCG Player at least has the information. It has the photos of all 12 cards in that set in English. So
okay, good,
existence is confirmed.
good.
Last thing that Laura said in her comment is, please update the Dan is wrong tracker. Charizard is not normally available in Scarlet and Violet, but was one of the first event Pokemon that was available in raids. Though now Home Sport has been added, you can bring in anyone from earlier generations. So we were talking about how good Charizard was, and I said I believed it was in Scarlet and Violet. Apparently, if you just buy the base game, it is not originally in there. There was some sort of a limited time event where you could get Charizard in Scarlet Violet, but now you can import it from your older games. So I was wrong once again, and my wife has pointed it out. I'm just happy I'm not wrong too much on actual cards, and it's other things that I'm wrong on, which I'm happy to be wrong on.
On all the prop bets for the over-unders, Dan, you're always over. So anybody looking for that, I'm going to suggest taking the over on a routine basis.
Yeah. Well, that's the rest of what Laura said. Now, I'm sure Laura is always happy to point out when I'm wrong about something. Anyway, next we have Bren, who just says we need the video. As I said, the video's not going anywhere. Ponga said we need 10-hour videos. 2 hours isn't long enough, and you don't. I'm sure you were kidding.
Ponga's way too lonely. But I appreciate it, Ponga. Thank you. We appreciate the nice sentiment.
Then we had Craig Holmes come back, who we were just talking about because of the 2016 McDonald's set. So this is a long comment, so I don't expect you to read it out. Yeah, he's said a lot of stuff, but basically said thanks for answering his questions. No problem. Obviously, it's helped us out because it's made us realize that David was missing a McDonald's set that we didn't realize. And he had some other suggestions for viewership and stuff, which if people want to see his suggestions, they can go read the comment. But a lot of that stuff, again, is, as I said, it is stuff that is in the works. It is stuff that I'm learning. I'm teaching myself different techniques and stuff all the time in editing these podcasts. And a lot of the stuff he's mentioned is stuff that is going to be happening at some point in the future.
And Craig, I just want to personally say thank you. I thought the suggestion, Dan and I have had fun around this idea of the Guinness Book of World Records situation, but I thought that was a really fantastic suggestion. And I actually, I'll talk later about ChatGPT, but basically, it's an interesting circumstance to think that we can get this done and actually create a little bit more publicity. So I really appreciated that, and gives me incentive to go back and update my spreadsheets and see if I might be able to submit for that. So
yeah, and if people don't know that, go listen to the very first episode of this podcast. That's where that was brought up. It's right near the start, I think. And I did just update the description for the first episode to do the chapter breakdowns of what we speak about, because that wasn't done for the first episode. I started doing it for episode 2 onwards, but I did just update it last night, actually, so that has the chapter breakdown, so you can find Guinness World Records in the description of episode 1 and jump to it.
Dan, it's great to know you're actually doing some work. I know that you are gainfully unemployed at this point. So since this is your full-time employment, yeah, let's use your time wisely and make sure we're accomplishing all the goals that we previously set forth in this process, which of course we've set none. So so I guess at that point you really don't have to work. It doesn't matter. So
there we go. Next up we have Lamar. Lamar is back. Says, don't worry, I did watch the podcast about David's origin, and I love that you got into Pokemon instead of baseball and even had a hand in the creation of Upper Deck. I don't know if you had the hand in the creation of Upper Deck, but you were one of the early people jumping on that. Upper Deck are in the news at the moment. I don't know if you've heard. Upper Deck are attempting to sue Disney, sue Ravensburger, sorry, for the new Disney Lorcana game. They've said that Upper Deck had hired someone to create a game for them, and then that person went to work for Ravensburger. Upper Deck never released that game, and they're saying that Lorcana is way too similar to their unreleased game. They believe that something has happened behind the scenes where that person has taken intellectual property that may have at that point belonged to Upper Deck. We'll maybe briefly touch on that as it escalates over the next few weeks, but that's a little teaser tidbit. We don't talk too much about Upper Deck or about Lorcana on here, but it was something interesting that happened this week.
Yeah, I hadn't read that. Interesting, for sure.
Lamar also continued, I'm definitely a completionist at heart too. I got back into Pokemon after college. After growing up, not being allowed to play the games, I love that there's so much variation in the artwork and there are numbered sets, unlike some other TCGs, and this one makes this one the most fun to collect. Fun question for next week, what is one of your favorite Vaporeon artworks, Dan? So, a lot of the recent stuff is really nice. It's going to be so hard just to pick one. I'm a big fan of the V and V Max alternate arts. I'm very glad they were more common in English than they were in Japan, especially the V Max. Classic ones, I'm a huge fan of Light Vaporeon. Light Vaporeon is a gorgeous card, but there's so much good artwork. Oh, the Japanese exclusive T promo from the Trainer Magazine. That's one I'll mention. I could go on for about Vaporeon arts for a lot, but that's one I'll mention. I think those are some nice ones. All right, last two comments both come from Mertz. Shout out to Mertz, because we're recording this on the Sunday. I think Mertz discovered this podcast yesterday on Saturday, and Mertz listened to every episode back to back. I believe he said in a comment in an earlier video was listening to them at 2 times speed so that we sounded like chipmunks, but Mertz commented on every podcast. I'm going to go back and I'll reply to some of your older ones, Mertz, since I'm not going to go back through and read everything out, but yeah, an unbelievable dedication to getting caught up before this recording.
But wow, that's very cool.
Yeah, Mert said, cool. I usually listen without watching, so unless you start to talk about a specific card, and then they toggle back to the video. And also mentioned, I think there is a newcomer to the Charizard Pikachu Supremacy combo, Umbreon. Not that Umbreon will ever overtake them, just it's the only Pokemon that's ever sniffed the conversation recently. I do agree that Umbreon has taken up some of that mantle. We talked last week of, are we ever going to move on from Charizard? Thing to remember, though, is Umbreon is not a new Pokemon. Some of it, the Umbreon Supremacy, is new, but Umbreon is still a Pokemon from Gold and Silver, so Umbreon still does have some of that nostalgia factor. Not as much nostalgia factor as Charizard and Pikachu, but Gold and Silver is still definitely in the nostalgia realm. I think one of the things that might hold Umbreon back is a lot of the times when they're making promos of Eeveelutions or even rare cards in sets, they never do just one of them. They will do the whole 8 at some point, whether it's split over a couple of sets, like we saw with the Alt Art VMAXs, or whether it's, a promo release per set. There's always that stuff lumped in, and at very least, Umbreon almost always comes with a matching Espeon card, which I think it restricts them slightly on what they can do. Charizard is broken free of Blastoise and Venusaur. Every time they release a Charizard promo, they don't need to go, oh, we now have to have the matching Blastoise, matching Venusaur. They do sometimes, but you look at Special Delivery Charizard, we didn't have to get Venusaur and Blastoise, and then some rarer stuff in Japan. Charizard, it's got its own Ultra Premium collection that we talked about. We don't have one of those for Venusaur Blastoise. Umbreon hasn't broken free of the Eeveelutions yet, and I don't think it will because all of the rest of the Eeveelutions have a huge fan base. There are people that like all 8, there are people like individual ones, even if Umbreon seems to be the most popular. So I think that because of the fact that it doesn't have that level of freedom that Charizard and Pikachu do, we may never get the full extent of what Umbreon could be.
Dan, just a quick follow-up. Can you define, I know just in my mind, but can you define Eeveelutions?
So Eeveelutions, the Pokemon Eevee from Generation 1. In Generation 1, there were 3 different things it could evolve into. It had a branching path of evolution, and I'm trying to remember, it might have been the only Pokemon in Generation 1 that did that. I'm struggling to think of another one, but depending on which elemental stone you used, it could evolve into Vaporeon, Jolteon, or Flareon. And then in Generation 2, they added Espeon and Umbreon, which was day and night based, based on its friendship level. And then Diamond and Pearl added Leafeon, Glaceon, which you had to evolve it in a certain area of the map. And then XY added Sylveon, which was to do with the Pokemon loving its trainer before it evolved. So Eeveelution is just a catch-all term for Pokemon that evolve from Eevee. So those 8 different Pokemon.
Are there any other characters like that that branch out in various different evolution chains?
There are some more now, none that are as many as 8, but there are quite a few more that can branch into 2, potentially 3 different options. But I think it was the fact that Eevee was the first one, and if I remember right, in Red and Blue, Laura's probably going to correct me on this. I think it was either very hard to get an Eevee, or potentially there was only one given. It might have been one of those Pokemon in Red and Blue where you just got one Eevee, and obviously there was no breeding in that game, so you couldn't get eggs and hatch another one. So you had to make a specific decision in Red and Blue which evolution you wanted on your game, and the only way to get the others was to trade with someone else. So I think it tied a lot of people very heavily to one of those initial 3 because of you had to look into it and say, which of these do I want? And so people picked their favorites out very quickly, and then that's just escalated over the years.
Got it.
I will say as well, when Eeveelution merchandise happens, Eevee itself quite often is in that, so it's the 9 Pokemon rather than just the 8 Pokemon that evolve from Eevee. Eevee itself gets a lot of love. All right, well, that's all the comments for this week. So, David, I'll pass the floor to you. What do you got for us now?
Well, I think everyone knows what time it is, Dan. It's time for Trainer Deck A or Trainer Deck B. Are you ready?
I am, and I would say no one knows what time it is because we've done this once so far and it was at a different time in the episode. But hopefully people learn. Hopefully they learn what time it is for the future, because I don't think you're going to let this one go.
No, not really. And Dan, the thing I want to say is I just want to make sure I reiterate the rules to you. Dan, I'm going to give you some choices. You go ahead and pick one. You got 10 seconds to pick, and you also have 10 seconds to explain this choice that you select if you'd like. If you choose not to explain anything, that's on you. All right, Dan? If you exceed 10 seconds, Pokemon judges will appear, and you will possibly be banished to Pokemon away from heaven for the rest of your days, okay?
All right.
All right, here we go. Dan, here we go. Dan, manicure or pedicure, Dan?
Manicure. No one needs to be subjected to touching my feet.
All right, Dan, but I do notice that the fingernails are a source of pleasure in the
I do that videos. I do that myself.
All right, Dan, a goat or a sheep?
Goat.
Well, that was a very authoritative selection, Dan. Great. That's with a question mark at the end.
Sure.
Dan, William Shakespeare or Charles Dickens?
Ooh, probably Shakespeare.
All right. Probably never read a book in your life, but that's fine, Dan. If it wasn't Pokemon related.
In England, you have to learn Shakespeare in school.
Okay, good. That's a good explanation. Dan, Big Ben or the Statue of Liberty?
Big Ben, I think.
Yeah, the Brit at his roots.
Yeah.
And Crabominable or the Abominable Snowman?
Crabominable, and I'm going to use my 10 seconds to go back to the last question and remind you that the Statue of Liberty is French.
I'm looking at where it's located.
It's located there, but she's not American, she's French. She
She
lives in
doesn't
New York.
care. She's authentic, and that's all that matters,
All
Dan.
right.
Dan, 33 or 66?
The 33. I don't know what.
Again, one of those really, really
I
convinced
don't.
about that one.
I don't know.
Dan,
I missed a meaning somewhere.
okay. Dan, sunrise or sunset?
Sunset, because it means it's time for me to start working.
Regular art or alternate art, Dan?
Alternate art. Alternate arts are gorgeous.
Hershey's or Nestle's?
Nestle.
Nest what?
Nestle.
Okay, I
That's
guess
how you
we could
pronounce
go.
it.
Let's go
Also,
Nestle. Okay,
yeah, it's Nestle.
Nestle,
Also,
and we're gonna
Hershey's.
do the plants probably with the
Hershey's sucks.
turnips, and
Hershey's
the plant.
sucks. As
Okay,
long as we
fair
get
enough.
that across, that Hershey's is awful chocolate.
Which is the one that's yellow in the bottle?
What? I don't know.
One of them's yellow. One of them's the yellow one is Nestle's. That's the good one.
Okay.
But I'm this isn't my A or deck B. So shut up,
No.
David, and just ask the questions.
There we go.
Dan, pink or blue? Because I know your hair's been both.
Pink.
Dan, nationals or worlds?
Worlds.
Okay, fair enough. Dan, that's it for a trainer. Thanks for playing Trainer Deck A or Trainer Deck B. Anybody that has criticisms of Dan's answers, please put them in the comments, because boy, do we need some comments that don't just come from Craig Holmes, Lamar, Palatown, or NP Pokemon, or Dan at Catch 'em All Collectibles, and I forgot a few of them.
But we do still want those people to comment also.
Everyone, please, everybody comment. All right, Dan, I've got another topic on tap here, and it says.
Okay.
Any promos from the recent regionals? So my question, Dan, is Laura went out to regionals and she drives 10 hours
Yes.
and she drives 10 hours back and whatever. Are there regional promos that dumb guys like me that like to be completionists and want to collect are going to need to be worrying about this year?
Yes, so very interesting actually, the one she went to a few weeks ago, she got Arven. Arven is a card from the Scarlet and Violet base set, so it was a reverse holo version with the regionals logo on it, and then there was also a staff one. So she got that one then, and I didn't buy myself one because I assumed she'd get the same one 2 weeks later when she went to another regionals. Interestingly, that regionals gave out Roxanne. Roxanne was a regionals promo from a couple of years ago. I don't know why they gave that one out again, but that one isn't a new one. That one has already been a regionals promo, but it was, until last weekend, unbelievably rare. It was one of the few staff promos we were missing when I went through my Sword and Shield stuff, which I'm in the middle of organizing. And I was like, okay, how much is it going to cost me to buy Roxanne's staffs? And there were none on eBay, and there was one on TCG Player listed for $300. And I was like, oh, we have missed the boat on Roxanne's. This is a huge oversight on my part. We should have just bought those earlier. And then I was doing that while Laura was at this regionals, and I messaged that to her, and she was like, okay, weirdly, the player that's in our group, because she traveled with a couple of other judges and one player, got the Roxanne as his player promo. I was like, oh, that's weird. Well, let me know what happens when you get your staff promo. And she was like, yep, they just had Roxanne's again for some reason, which worked out well for us because she managed to trade for another one, so we got our Roxanne staffs that we missed a year and a half ago. And I was able to then go and buy my Arven staff for a lot cheaper than it would have cost me to buy the Roxanne. So that was a long way of saying, yes, there is an Arven promo at recent regionals.
Okay, good.
We don't know if I think we've had all the regionals now that are happening before Internats and Worlds, so we don't know if Arven is going to come back after Worlds or if it's going to change after Worlds. But there is an Arven out there.
Okay, all right. Good. Well, that's. I'm going to throw it back to you then. I know you've got a few things to talk about. I do as well, but let me give it back to you right now, Dan. Jump on the next topic.
Okay. Well, first thing I mentioned is Paldea Evolved is out now. It came out this weekend. I've opened quite a bit of it. I haven't opened my sealed case yet at time of recording this. I have opened a lot of pre-release kits. I've opened the ETBs, the blisters, that kind of thing. I'm trying to get it all filmed in advance so that I don't have boxes sitting around wanting to film one a week, upload one a week. I want to know what I've got. So I'll still upload them spread out over a few weeks, but I want to get everything filmed as quick as I can. One interesting thing about the set that I've seen online is there is a repeating error card, it seems, in the set. It's on the card Paldea and Wooper. which it's the Paldean Wooper number 129, because there's two Paldean Woopers in the set. And it's a printer hickey, which is, you'll have seen them before. There'll be a picture on screen now, but it's kind of it's a weird mark. It's a mark that the printer would leave on a card. It will have like colorful dots, normally surrounded by a white circle. Normally, it would be something that me and you just totally wouldn't care about. It's one of those things you wouldn't get. One of those things where if I pulled one, I'd hang on to it, because normally they're kind of one-offs, or at least not that many of them. It's just a problem with the actual printing machine. But from what's been posted online, it seems like a large amount of these have been printed with this exact same printer hickey. Like, one person posted that they had 30 or 40 copies, it looked like. I haven't pulled any myself, and I'm thinking that might be because I haven't opened my case yet. By the time we record the next episode of this, I will have opened my case. It may be that the error is in the packs that come in sealed boxes in cases, and is not in the pre-release kits, ETBs, that kind of thing. That's just kind of a theory for now. Or, it may be that this person who has posted their 30 or so online, they have the majority of them that are out there. Because it's only one or two people I've seen actually posting them, and they both had a lot. So it may just be a small portion of the print run had it, but the way that cutting the sheets worked, they all ended up across a couple of cases. So we will keep you up to date on that the more we know. But that's just something I think is worth mentioning.
Okay, good. And that leads me into a few things I wanted to talk about with respect to Paldea Evolved, and we've sort of touched on a little bit of this before, but number one, in a video of yours, I watched one of your videos. I'm so proud of myself. You'd be proud of me too. So I watched when you opened it, and you said something about opening, because you weren't having the greatest luck opening these 40 packs that you opened.
Yes,
and
that was from it was 10 pre-release build and battle kits. Yeah.
Okay, and your comment was that comparatively to the sealed booster boxes, opening these kinds of things for you could point to potentially higher highs and lower lows.
Yeah.
Meaning that you might have better luck or considerably worse luck. And I found that a little bit surprising. And I know that maybe that was more of a subjective comment than objective. And I definitely want folks to weigh in on their opening experiences as well. But why would you have said that? Dan, why did you articulate something that made no sense to me at all? Who says that it should be different in distribution fashion from opening up boxes versus opening up build and battle kits versus opening up collection boxes, etc.?
Well, so the sealed case of build and battle kits, people who don't know, the build and battle kits are what you get at pre-release. There's a sealed deck. There's 4 packs in it. And a sealed brick of those is 10 of those. So if you're opening up a sealed booster box, the 36 packs, there is kind of a range of how many hits you're going to get. Obviously, Pokemon says across the whole... They have like certain odds across the whole print run, like the entire print run of a set. Pokemon knows what those odds are. They don't publicly reveal them anymore. Back when it was Wizards of the Coast, they would say that it was 1 in every 33 cards was a holo foil, which meant 1 in every 3 packs had a foil in it. You kind of knew that. But that, again, was across the whole print run. Pokemon now doesn't release the odds of, how many packs will have a gold, how many will have a special illustration rare, whatever. But if you look at the data, if you look at people opening sealed booster boxes, there is always a pretty set range. For Scarlet, for Paldea Evolved, every person I've seen opening a booster box has said they've either gotten 1 special illustration rare and 1 gold, or 2 special illustration rares. Everyone I've seen so far has said that they've had exactly that, no more, no less. There is a chance, people might get more, might get less. They seem to be the outliers if they do exist. And then the amount of, the EXs, it's between 5 to 7 is what I've seen people say they're pulling. Anything lower or higher than that is a huge outlier, if you plot it on a graph of how many things people are pulling. So when you're buying a sealed booster box, you kind of expect it to always be within a certain range. But if you're buying the loose packs, because basically inside build and battle kits, it's not, even though it is sealed as a brick of 40 packs, it's not a box plus 4 packs. It's basically 40 loose packs. And then it's the same as if you then go and buy, much higher level, the ETBs. Like I've done a video which I think will be out by the time people see this video, where it's I opened 40 packs from 4 Elite Trainer boxes. It was 2 store ones, 2 Pokemon Center ones, and then again, you have the blister packs where it comes with like 1 random pack and 3 random packs, whatever, and those are just random packs. Like within the box, you have those odds, you have those levels of, okay, you're not going to open a box and every pack is going to have an EX, or every pack is going to have an illustration rare. It's just not possible within a box. But when you're looking at just taking bricks of 4 at a time, you could open it where out of those 10 kits, every kit could have a special illustration rare or a gold. It's unlikely, but it could happen. But also, each of those kits could have basically nothing in it, because you could have just got the 4 random packs that have no hits at all. It's a case of all booster packs are basically lottery tickets, but it's the difference between buying 4 completely random games, 40 completely random games, and 36 games where it is within a boundary. It's like if you shipped, I don't know how lottery tickets totally work, the scratch cards, but if they're shipped to a store and they say like, there's a roll of them, if it's like, oh, on this whole roll, we know that there's 20 winning tickets, say. If you buy that whole roll of tickets, you're getting 20 winning tickets. But if there's, 400, 500 tickets on a roll, if you go to 500 different stores and buy 1 ticket from each, you could win way more. You could hit 50 wins, you could hit 100 wins, or you could hit no wins. But I don't know if scratch cards do have those kind of odds, but that's
I guess my whole, yeah, I mean, the reason that I was asking the question is because you weren't opening 4 packs and that was it. You were opening up a sealed kit of 10, a sealed box of 10 different kits with 4 packs inside. And one would argue that it would seem that on a production line, unless you've got actual people sitting there with, hats on their heads to make sure that there's no germs, that they're distributed into boxes, and there's 4 packs that go in, and the next 4 go in, and the next 4 go in, and then eventually they get sealed up and put into the whole 40 or 40 pack kit. So it would seem that there's some continuity in the process for you, versus you talking about, well, I'm going to different boxes and I'm only opening up 1 build and battle kit and I'm going to different stores. This was just consecutive boxes in a
you would kind of think that that would be the case, but just from the amount, I mean, how much I opened for different things. Previous sets, back when pre-releases weren't actually being run, I was opening 60 pre-release kits worth, so 6 of these bricks of 10, and just the floors and the ceilings on what I opened did vary just huge amounts more than booster boxes. Like the 40 packs from a sealed brick, I've had ones that were a lot worse than the worst booster box I've opened from a similar era, or I've had ones that were so much better than the best booster box I've opened. So it is just whatever you think of how it should work. Just from experience, you can see that it is a much bigger range and there is much bigger variance within those products.
Give me a conclusion, Dan, for the folks that are listening. Give me a conclusion. Should you never open those things up if you are not a risk taker, if you are, if you're looking to have a good opening experience, should you stick to the tried and true booster boxes if they exist versus all the other stuff?
I think for Scarlet Violet era, I think if you're wanting to put together a set by opening products, I think getting a case is the way to go, because of like how nice the pull rates are. You're hitting a lot of nice stuff from basically every box. Older eras, you can play the odds a bit more. When you're opening something like we've talked about a lot, Evolving Skies, when you're wanting to hit that Umbreon, it's like the odds of you getting it in a case are so unbelievably low anyway. If you want to play a bit of a gamble, play a bit of a gamble, because you're already heavily gambling on getting anything of value out of that case anyway. Whereas at least with Scarlet Violet, you can say, okay, I'm probably going to get X amount of special rares, X amount of golds, rather than it just being maybe I get one, maybe I get nothing, whatever. Um, one of the reasons I do the pre-release kits as well, though, is because I want the pre-release promos and the variant cards that come out of those, out of the actual decks that come with the packs. That's one of the reasons I do that.
Dan, you opened up your 40 packs and you got one gold card,
Yeah,
and that was neat. I watched another video, which I'm going to comment on in a moment. I try to watch a few more things now since we're doing these coffee talks
yeah,
to act like I know a little bit more than I used to. And he pulled one gold card out of an entire box of packs.
okay.
Mathematically, how many gold cards are in that set? And so, what are we looking at as far as and I know you're going to talk about just the number of secret rares.
Yeah.
Doesn't it look like Paldea Evolved? If you were to collect it, it's going to be a pretty darn expensive set.
Somewhat. There's 9 golds in the set, and there are 15 special illustration rares. That's where most of the money, or most of the difficulty in pulling them, is with those two categories. I mean, some of the money is in the full arts as well. But it seems to be about, with Paldea Evolved, from what I've seen, people are saying from sealed cases, it comes out to about 8 special and 4 gold. So like I said, a box would either have 2 specials or 1 special, 1 gold, and it seems to be about an 8-4 split. So it seems that about 2 cases would get you almost all of the way there if you're lucky on not getting duplicates, which sounds like a lot, but like I say, if you're comparing it to anything from Sword and Shield era, when you're having to open 10, 20 cases to even have a shot, it's really come down. And if you open just a couple of boxes, it is going to spike wildly depending on whether you hit the top card or you don't, as to whether how much it's going to cost you to finish the set. So
Okay.
it can look like a lot, but these sets are so much easier and cheaper to collect than anything we've seen in the past 5 years. Like, they're easier to finish than Sun and Moon sets too.
Understand. Uh, the question is, I have a question for our watchers, listeners, and I
Okay.
would like them to comment. It's a very simple comment: is are you going to collect? Are you going to put together the Paldea Evolved set as a whole? Is that a goal of yours? And the reason I ask specifically is not just part of the equation of how the distribution is and whether or not you want to buy 2 cases or spend enough money on a set that's going to equivalent to 2 cases, so you paid $1,500 to buy the set, but also because apparently it has no Charizard. If we've talked about this before, Dan.
Yeah, this
Um,
set doesn't have a Charizard.
okay, so will you collect it or will you skip it? And feel free to give us a reason why as well. I'm just curious to get a kind of a feel of folks out there and what they're planning to do.
Yeah. I will say that buying if you just want a full set, buying a full set is still the way to go rather than opening anything. The only reason There's a few reasons I open stuff. One is because I get videos out of it. I can do 6 videos opening a case, which are 20, 30 minutes each, whereas if I just purchase a set, it's a 10-minute video flicking through the set. Next is I make sure I'm supporting our local store, because they are really good to us with helping us get the promo sets, and they're letting Laura run tournaments stuff there. I like to support local stores in the area as well, and of course also Laura gets a lot of sealed product from tournaments. So like I've got 1 case here. I'm going to open that for videos now. I know that's not going to even put together the first of the 2 sets we try and put together, but I know that Laura has a lot more boxes coming in down the line, which are then going to go towards filling some of those gaps. So that's why I do that.
Yeah, and the only exception I would say to your comments about it's always cheaper and better to buy the full set, and of course I've always done that, is,
Yeah,
I wish there were more people involved in doing this uh, in a collaborative fashion. So if you had a friend and they had a friend and you had 3 or 4 folks or even 2 folks that were going to build sets, and you could each open a couple cases and be able to trade with each other and have
yeah,
extras that you might have for other trading purposes, you do get a lot of extras as well. And sometimes some of those hits won't be, they'll be duplicative in a
Yeah.
set, but there'll be something else you can monetize in another way. So
I mean, that's
that's a little bit idyllic in the way I look at it, but I
no,
think that's
that's
fun.
what Pokemon League is for.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yes,
I go to
exactly.
Pokemon League every week, and that's where I finished a lot of my Scarlet Violet stuff I got from trading our extras at Pokemon League. You know,
Yeah.
I got all the last reverses that I needed, and then the last few of the bigger cards we traded at Pokemon League. Some local stores had trade days, so it is done. People should check out Pokemon Leagues a lot more.
Dan, one of the videos I watched on this Paldea Evolved was specifically around a gentleman's desire to determine if weighing packs is still a thing. And I found it really interesting. Didn't have a ton of views or whatever, but
Yeah,
he actually weighed all 36 packs, and there were some decent hits in the, and it was not very much spread. It was like 0.25 amongst the entirety of
yeah,
grams through the entirety of all of the different packs. But the top two heaviest weight ones were two pretty reasonable hits, including the gold.
yeah,
Um, so folks know I've never weighed. I don't weigh. I don't believe in weighing, but I understand why people do. I understand why people would want to buy weighed stuff. I always wonder aloud, where do all the unweighed, where do all the packs that are weighed and are lightweights go? Because I'm afraid so many of those have been put into uh, slabs and will never be worth anything because somebody wants to buy a perfect 10 slab from a grading agency. But your thoughts real quick. Oh, by the way, his conclusion was the code cards were all weighed the same. There was no difference in
yeah,
any of those, and he doesn't seem like they had rectified any of this stuff quite yet.
yeah.
Your
So,
thoughts on that, Dan?
well, the reason he mentioned the code cards is during the Sword and Shield era, and I think maybe towards the end of the Sun and Moon era, they had two different code cards. There would be a black code card and a white code card, and one of them would go into a pack that had a hit, and one would go into a pack that didn't have a hit, and the one that went into the pack without a hit weighed slightly more, so it offset the difference. Because the weight difference is in foil. It's in the tiny slab of foil that's on a hit. That's where this tiny weight difference comes from. So the code cards would offset that. I think the reason that Pokemon didn't do it for Scarlet Violet is because every pack now has a foil in it, as well as the reverses. You know, you don't get non-foil rares anymore. So I think they were hoping that it would be sorted based on that, because every pack has the same number of foil cards no matter what. But it isn't taking into account that, you know, the golds and the special illustration rares have some extra texturing, which if you're going down to the point not whatever of a gram, you can figure out. So I think it is something they are going to need to figure out. It's not quite as bad as with Sword and Shield, where it was a big difference. And I think if with a WotC product, it's like a couple of grams difference. You know, it's nothing like that. So it's only really dedicated people who could actually do it. But I think it's something they will realize and they'll figure out.
Dan, I think it's time now for a new segment I like to call my weekly rant. Are you
Okay,
ready, Dan?
go ahead.
Dan, today I'm going to talk about weighing or not weighing your packs. All right. I have just absolutely had it with this whole discussion, this debate over weighing or not weighing. I think that if you're going to buy a box of packs and you're going to open them up and you're going to sit there and you're going to try to discern in certain columns of the box, in certain, areas, is it a left? Is it a right? Is it a heavy? Is it a light? Uh, and what's the purpose, Dan? I can walk into Target, I can buy a tin, I can buy a collection box, I can bring them home, I can open them. I can put those packs on a counter, I can look at those packs, I can shuffle those packs as if I'm trying to just about to get ready to play poker in the casino. And it's no different that if I'm playing poker in the casino, let's say I'm playing, poker, I'm playing blackjack, whatever. Am I going to hit that big card? Am I going to not hit that big card? Am I going to double down? Am I going to split? How risky do I want to be?
Yeah,
And then I'm going to be judged for it, Dan? You think people are going to sit there and judge me for it because I've decided that I'm going to go after whatever I thought was something I needed to get because I'm different than someone else? I have to respect my own authenticity. And a lot of people look at this, Dan, and they're thinking to themselves, no, it makes no sense at all. Okay. If I'm going to get the box, I'm going to get the packs, I'm going to put the machine out there. And speaking of machines, well, I mean, what's it any different from just you and I getting on the scale, Dan? I mean, do we look different because we're a different poundage on a scale? That doesn't even make any sense. I think that the idea that someone's going to look in and figure it out, and then you're going to monetize that, Dan. You're going to put that out and you're going to say, oh, it's worth more or less. Why is it worth more or less? Because you said so. You don't know anything, Dan. You're just a guy doing a podcast sitting there with a preference for pink over blue, likes to get your nails done rather than your pedicure. And the thing is, Dan, it doesn't have to be Target. It could be Walmart, right? It could be an online purchase. I can go out there. It's money. At some point, I'm spending money, right? And so at the end of the day, that's the thing that really gets to me, Dan. That's what really irks me the most. And I thought I'd get it off my chest. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Well, I will say for generally the reasons, however you want to call it, people are doing the weighing with vintage packs. It's old What's It era stuff. People weigh them and they sell them at different prices, saying if you are going to open this, it's got a hollow card in it, which is a card that's worth more. Anyone doing weighing on modern product is generally not going to ever say that they've weighed them. They're going to open the stuff with the good hits and then they're going to sell the duds as unweighed packs. It's it's stores that are have no morals or whatever. Very, very few actual in-person stores would be doing this, but a lot of people online, if you see them just selling packs, maybe they just weighed the box, opened the good hits, and they're selling the singles of the good hits. There's no reason really for anyone to be weighing modern product unless they are trying to scam people or get one over on people. I can't see any reason for anyone to be doing it because no one is going to be buying modern packs if you say I weighed it and there's no hit in there. Whereas at least with vintage packs, people will say, oh, I want these, I want the pack sealed, or I want to just open a pack and I don't care that it's not going to have a hollow in it. People will still want those at the lower price, but no one is wanting the light modern packs. So I don't see any reason for anyone to be doing weighing of modern unless they are trying to scam someone somewhere.
Dan, are you saying you agree with my rant or you don't?
I think I agree with it on a lot of modern stuff. I think there are arguments to be made about the vintage stuff.
Dan, I didn't say anything in my rant. You have to listen. My rant goes nowhere. My weekly rant will be inconclusive. It will have no tie-ins to anything.
All right.
Eventually, it will meander wildly across all lakes and rivers, and it will come back to the beginning with no positive conclusions about anything.
So what is differentiating your rant from the rest of this podcast? Because that's
nothing, and that's why I want to make sure you get that. Okay, that's exactly right. So when you watch this back one time after you edit it, realize I said absolutely nothing, and look forward to my next week's rant in a likely fashion, in a similar fashion. Okay.
Well, I think we're sort of on line for one other thing I want to talk about, which was Obsidian Flames. We talked about it a little last week. This is going to be the Charizard set that's coming out in a few months' time. They've released
just one sec. Laura, make sure if he says anything wrong now. I think I feel some kind of wrong thing coming. Make sure you get him right now. Go ahead, Dan.
This is about cards. I think I'm good. So they've said what's going to be coming in the set. They've given kind of a breakdown, and it's really interesting to look at the numbers compared to Scarlet Violet and Paldea Evolved. So first off, we have the EXs, your regular EXs. There's going to be 21 of those in the set. There were 11 in Scarlet Violet, and there were 17 in Paldea Evolved. These are your lowest level hits. That stuff where you're getting 5 or 6 per box. They're going up on that. But on all of the rest of the stuff, all of the secret stuff that's numbered after the set, it's coming way down. So Obsidian Flames has 12 illustration rares compared to 24 in Scarlet Violet and 36 in Paldea Evolved. 6 special illustration rares compared to 10 in Scarlet Violet and 15 in Paldea Evolved. It has 12 full arts compared to 20 in Scarlet Violet and 26 in Paldea Evolved, and only 3 gold cards compared to 6 in Scarlet Violet and 9 in Paldea Evolved. So basically, if they keep a similar level of pull rate, you're getting the same number of hits per box, Obsidian Flames is going to be a very, very easy set to finish. It could be entirely possible for you to finish the set within one case if it has the same pull rates as the first two Scarlet Violet sets.
What do you? So I have two thoughts when you say that. My first thought is I cannot wait. By the way, do not let this alter your comments on this video. Personally, I cannot wait to get that Paldea Evolved set in my hands. Because if maybe it's the last of the huge, monstrously, all these special card sets that is so beautiful and so unique compared to what follows it. Who knows? But Dan, what's the logic behind that? You know, where we talk about all the printing they're doing and printing into oblivion, and it's great for the collectors and the hobby.
Yeah.
What's the logic behind all of a sudden
I
cutting
mean,
things down so much? What is your theory?
I think it's just a case of what is still available from the Japanese sets to put in, because as we talked about, there is a special Japanese set. It's about to release, I think it releases in a few days, called 151, which is all Kanto Pokemon. Side note, we did find out that's going to be released in English. I'll talk about that more in a moment. But
Okay,
because
stop. Everyone knows this but me. So I know Kanto is some kind of area, right? So what is?
Kanto is first generation.
Oh,
Fir-
Kanto means, so when you say it's all Kanto Pokemon, it
yeah,
means
first
like that.
first
Oh,
generation.
the first 151. Okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah.
I understand. Go ahead.
So because that's what's coming out in Japan and that's getting saved for its own English set, and I guess because they've put so much stuff into Paldea Evolved, there just aren't cards out there that they could be filling Obsidian Flames with. You know, there just aren't any more illustration rares, or there aren't any more golds that they have the option of putting into that set. So it will be interesting to see. Like I say, all of this is going to depend on if they keep the pull rates the same. If they make the pull rates worse, you know, if they make golds a lot rarer, if they make special illustrations a lot rarer, this isn't going to make any sense. But if they keep it the same, it will be interesting to see how much that smaller set size does offset the this is a Charizard set hype around it. Because if you can basically finish a set from one case, then there's going to be way less investing in stuff like we've talked about. People investing in boxes and cases. Is it going to be where maybe a sealed case has a huge premium over 6 individual boxes, which has never normally been the case before? But if it comes down to where you are almost guaranteed to pull a full set from a case, maybe we see premiums on a sealed case. But
Well,
that's all something we'll see when the pull rates happen. If the pull rates change, then none of that means anything.
well, and of course, also it's going to depend on that how much they do print, right? Because that's the issue. Is
Yeah,
this if they
but
stay constant to this late the printing? That set should come out those boxes should come out high because it's a Charizard set, but hopefully end
yeah,
up falling in price over the course of time in subsequent print runs. You know what's interesting to me, and of course what's interesting to me is usually not interesting to anybody, but the more that I get involved in this because of our podcasts, I it refreshes my memory to the fact that I
yeah,
never ever think about that all of the English cards are coming from Japanese cards, and that's what you're
yeah. I
saying.
think a lot of people just put it out of their mind there that the Pokemon Company International can't make cards. Like if they have, for Obsidian Flames, they would have wanted to put 24 illustration rares, but they aren't allowed to just go in and make 12 more cards have illustration rares if Japan hasn't done it first. There's a tiny handful of times where anything has been exclusive English or English first. It's the on the ball cards to do with the World Cup where they're playing football. Those are obviously English exclusive, but it's very rare things like that. They have to jump through so many hoops to get the Pokemon Company to sign off on that it's just not something they could do for a regular set.
Dan, in your memory, in your recent memory or the memory of recent sets or whatever, do you recall anything that has been a set like this, Obsidian Flames, where they kind of ran out of cards and so it didn't necessarily match something before or after it?
I think there's some sets where it kind of drops in terms of how much there is. I think I'm trying to think of set size off the top of my head. One that comes to mind was Fusion Strike had way less. It was a much bigger set than the sets that came before it, but it had way less big hits. So I think Fusion Strike came right after Evolving Skies, actually. So Evolving Skies was I think about 150 cards, but maybe 50 to 60 secret rares or big hits. Whereas Fusion Strike was it's something like 180, 190 cards all in, but there's only like 20 or 30 big hits, which I don't know how much of that was Pokemon changing the way that they wanted their sets to work and how much of it was running out of stuff. But it does sometimes happen where uh, sets will change like that one to the next. But this one, just with it being a Charizard set and being such a vast difference, is definitely one that just stood out to me.
Dan, does every Japanese card that's issued in a set in Japan end up in the English sets? Do they all one for one in some fashion end up being here?
So if it's in a set in Japan, they almost always end up getting over here. Not always within the same sets. You know, sometimes they'll be held off for later sets. Sometimes some cards from sets will become promos. Generally, cards from Japanese sets, main series sets, I guess I should say, main series sets, generally the cards will end up printed in English. Some special sets will end up with stuff missing. Like maybe if Japan does like a big special set, some of that will get pulled to a main set, or some will get released as promos, and then some will just be missing. And then obviously a lot of Japanese promos never get released over here. But I think for main series sets, the vast majority, if not all of it, does come over.
Okay. Okay. Very, really interesting stuff that, again, uh, looking at what's happening in our talks about the 151 set and
Yeah.
everything coming to the US, it refreshes my mind to these kinds of ways that the cards are created and some of the
Yeah.
restrictions and limitations. And yeah, I really never realized that over all the years of collecting, but it's becoming more and more
Right.
prominent
Yeah.
in what I read. So,
And like I said, I'd mentioned on the 151 set, we have had confirmation that that English is getting the 151 set. It's going to come out in September, and it's going to be it's a special set. So it's going to be one of those ones where you can't just go to a store normally and buy a booster box. It's you have to buy like the products with the promos and a few packs. It has been said this time. We haven't had photos of any of this. This is just what I'm reading from people who've said what they can order. That you can buy booster pack bundles. So bundles of just 6 booster packs is going to be an official product. So that's the first time a special set has done that. Before it was you always had to buy stuff that came with promos or came with other stuff. So even if you have to buy them in blocks of 6, you are going to be able to, if everything that's been said is correct, buy just booster packs of 151. I'm assuming it's going to work where the actual 151 Pokemon are going to be in our set. It would be very strange for them to take those out. What they'll probably do is some of the illustration rares, the special illustrations, whatever, they will take some of those out of the set, and they will make some of those the promos that come in those box sets. Like, I don't know if you remember with Pokemon Go, there was like the box sets that had the 3 full art trainers. There was one for each team. In Japan, those were in the booster packs, those full art trainers, but they became promos over here. So it will likely be something like that, where some of the illustration rares or special illustration rares get made into promos rather than actually being in the packs. But I have to assume if they're marketing this still as Pokemon 151, then the main set of 151 is going to be in the packs.
okay. Dan, we're at an hour and 10 minutes, and you may edit
Yeah.
it down, but at every video at an hour and 10 minutes, I like to ask for I call it my Wordle question of the day. Dan, do you know what Wordle is?
I do know what Wordle is, yeah.
Okay, Dan, have you ever played Wordle?
I did for a while, yeah.
All right, Dan, do you happen to recall? Don't cheat, Dan. You're only cheating yourself if you come up with an answer that's not realistic. Dan, do you happen to remember what your maximum streak was in Wordle, or do you have no recollection?
Oh, it wasn't very high. I didn't play every day. I just played occasionally.
Okay, good. That's a fair answer, Dan. I'm going to accept it on your word. So, for those watching now, do you guys play Wordle? I'm just curious because I got into a situation where I got locked into playing Wordle because my daughter-in-law played Wordle and she gave me some number of a maximum streak. I'd never played it in all the years. I only started just a couple of months ago, and now I had I was behind her because she'd been playing longer than I was, and then she ultimately lost on a tough word, and so I continue my streaking along. But I'd like to ask you guys, please put in the comments your maximum streak in Wordle. I don't want any cheating, especially from you, Pallet Town. All right. And so, yeah, let's hear what it is. And that way I can keep track and decide if it's worth me continuing to play or not. Or am I just a typical average Joe trying to show myself that my brain hasn't deteriorated exceedingly in my almost 62 years? Okay. Thank you,
All right,
Dan, for letting me just open up for the Wordle discussion there for a
cool.
moment or two.
All right, well, there's a few other things I want to mention. Like I said, we are getting on a little bit in time.
No,
One thing,
Dan, this is good. Did you remember the guy
okay.
that wants 6 or
Oh
10
yeah,
hours?
10-hour videos.
We're
Yeah.
good. Yeah, no sweat.
Next thing to mention, Mindy, who we spoke about a couple of videos ago, 2002 Juniors World Champion, player of the Tropical Mega Battle, has made a follow-up video saying that she sold her English Versus set. She hasn't given the price that she sold it for. If she decides to reveal that publicly, then we'll mention it. If she decides not to, that's on her. She has said that she's using some of the money to start playing Pokemon again. She is going to be going to Worlds in Japan, she said in her latest video. She also said that she was playing at a regionals, and I saw on social media, I think she ended this weekend's regionals at 4-2-2 on day one, which is, if for your first event in like 20 years, very, very respectable showing. For people who don't get what that means, it's 4 wins, 2 losses, 2 draws. It's not quite good enough to make day 2, but very, very good for a first event in 20 years. So I imagine we're going to see Mindy start making some day 2s, maybe some top 8 runs at future events.
Mindy, I hope that you understand what it is I do for a living, Mindy. I'm a wealth management advisor. And so basically, when my kids would ask me as youngsters what I used to do for a living, I said I would take people's money and I'd help them make more money with it. So, Mindy, when you get done deciding what you're going to, buy for those special trinkets and stuff that you deserve with that $100,000 or so plus, just remember, Uncle Dave, he's got a whole nother career. Give me a buzz, all right? We'll talk.
I think it's fair to say it, to call Mindy a friend of the channel at this point, or friend of the podcast at least.
Yes, or a
There's a
person that we...
few people who fall into that.
Yes, that's
And,
nice.
I said she said she's going to make a trip out to Japan for Worlds. Speaking of Worlds, I was hoping by the time we did this recording, I would know whether I got a Spectator badge from the lottery or not, because they were supposed to announce it on Friday. And then they've delayed it, and now they're announcing it like Monday, which is annoying because it falls into that time where when I publish this podcast, I will know whether I've got my Spectator badge, but as we're recording, I don't. At worst, I'm going to have to try and buy one from a player or something, but I just wish I knew if I got it in the lottery before this one.
I have a good feeling. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed for you, buddy. I have nothing but good vibes coming your way.
All right, one other thing I think we thought we should mention, even though it's not Pokemon, and neither of us are involved in this, like I know we mentioned Tyler the Great, when that Yu-Gi-Oh card sold, you were sort of involved in it. We need to mention the Magic the Gathering Lord of the Rings One Ring, just because it's too big of a deal in trading cards to not mention at some point. Basically, for very brief rundown for people, Magic the Gathering in the last few sets have started doing serialized cards. So there'd be cards where they're limited to, say, 500 copies, but they would be stamped 1 of 500, 2 of 500, etc. Cards on the table now, I absolutely hate it. I really, really hate trading card games doing serialized cards. If you want to do serialized stuff, just go and make sports cards, make a collectible card set. Don't put it in games where I want to be collecting my games. I know I'm in the minority here, but I hate it. Anyway, for the next set that's coming out, it is...
Dan, you don't like it, right?
No. Weirdly enough,
okay.
I don't like it.
I just want to make sure I was listening.
So, Magic the Gathering's latest set, or I guess next set, because it only officially comes out in about a week's time, is a Lord of the Rings collaboration set. Collaboration with the Tolkien estate. So all cards within the set are themed in the world of Middle-earth. They're all... It's a full new set. The main set is a full new design. There are commander decks that go with it that have some new designs, some reprints, etc. So for this set, they've also decided to do some serialized cards to represent the rings of power that are played throughout Lord of the Rings. They're doing soul rings in different in Elven, and they have different arts. So 300 with the Elvish art, 700 with the dwarf art, and 900 with the human art to represent, the 3, 7, 9 rings of power between the different races. They're also doing the One Ring. Now, the One Ring is just a card in the set. It's at Mythic Rare. They're doing a serialized version of that, with exclusive artwork in Elven, and it's one of one. So there will be one card ever released with this artwork. It says 001 out of 001 on the card. It's going to be in one collector booster. For people who don't know Magic, they do different types of boosters. The most expensive is collector booster, where every card in the booster is either foil or extended art or something special. And obviously, with something like this, the offers for whoever opens it have been going around for a while now. When they first announced that it was happening, offers were starting at around 100 grand, $100,000 right out the bat. By, I think Dan Bock was one of the first few people to put one down. He's a big Magic seller. Cassius Marsh, a former NFL player, got involved. He's been doing a lot with Magic lately. And the offers have just been going up and up from there. Cassius Marsh actually upped his recently to $500,000. And then DA Card World, Dave and Adams Card World, came in above everyone and have offered a $1 million price on the card. Theirs has a restriction that they need to have it in their possession within 1 month of it opening. So it's something like July 17th, I think their offer is good until, is what they've initially said. But out the bat for a card that hasn't even been opened yet, they're offering $1 million for it.
It reminds me of an old movie that I used to watch as a kid, Dan. I want a silver ticket, a golden ticket, Daddy. Get me a golden ticket. I'm working on it. Veruca, whatever. That was the old Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory stuff, right? So,
Yeah.
maybe the rich dads will put a factory together, start opening these things by the tons, and see if they can pull the 101.
Yeah, and the thing is as well, David Adams Card World is a store, so you have to think that. I mean, obviously there is value in publicity of making the $1 million offer or buying the $1 million card, but you have to think that if they're offering $1 million, their end goal as a store has to be at some point to resell it for more than $1 million. So they have to be on the lower end, or at the very least resell it for $1 million, and then have gotten all this publicity out of it.
Right.
So
And do you think that Tyler the Great card selling for 300,000 had something to do with the fact that they've got some barometer as well, or do you think there's just no relevance for them to say, "Gosh, we now see the real value in the one
no,
of
I
ones"?
think I think Magic was always at the level, but this isn't the first one of one Magic card. This is just the first one that you can pull from booster packs. Back in the day, Magic did a card called 1996 World Champion. That was the name of the card, and it was the same way that you get the number one trainers in English. You won their World Championship to get it, but they only had one division, so it was one person got that one card. And I believe it's with some collector, but it hasn't sold publicly in 15 years or something. And the other one of one card that was made is a special dragon card that when they opened up Wizards in Japan, they opened up the Japan branch, they had one copy of a card made, and it's in the lobby of Wizards of the Coast Japanese headquarters. So people knew value, because there is value talked about, especially with that 96 World Champion. That was talked about a lot in values, especially when we started seeing, these Alpha Black Lotuses selling for six figures, stuff like that. There was then talk of, what would the World Champion be worth if it came up today? And would it be worth more than the Lotus? It's not as iconic. Talk like that. And then when you come to this one of one, where just someone is going to get it basically at random, it's not a skill thing. It's not like you have to win world championships. Just someone is going to get it. I think there was always going to be this hype and stuff around it. Wizards of the Coast as well have said, if you open it, keep the empty packet that you got it from, because every pack has some unique serial cut number printed, I think, on the inside of the actual wrapper. And so Wizards know what pack it's in. So they know the serial number of the pack that has the card. So they're using that as a way to verify it, that you can verify it with them. Like, yes, I have this pack wrapper that matches as well. But other thing to mention, it's not even just the money offers. Did you have something to say there? Sorry, I'll let you jump
Well,
in.
I was just going to say that it always makes me think of two things. One is, how do we really understand that nobody knows where that card is, right? Like, you always feel like when
There's
there's something.
conspiracy theories.
Yes,
There's
that the
conspiracy theories
conspiracy theories about, yeah, because it's just so it's worth so much that isn't there a way to track it to find out somebody from the production facility knew it was going here, there, or whatever. So that's
Yeah.
always part one of it. And part two is I've read a lot about it saying completely on the other side, what if it never gets open?
Yeah,
Or
there are
what
people
if
who
it
collect
gets
steel
opened by
products.
a 7-year-old kid who has no idea what they have and sticks it in their deck and just never knows anything about it? So,
Well,
um,
on that second topic, it is in a collector booster. So there are, as I said, Magic has your regular draft booster. Then there are set boosters which are a little bit more expensive, and but they can come with multiple rares and stuff. The collector,
like a Topps Chrome versus a Topps pack or something.
yeah, like collector boosters, even for a regular set, collector boosters are about $20-$30 a pack.
Wow.
Um, and now for a collector box is 12 packs, and for the Lord of the Rings they're going for about $375 for a box of 12 packs. So it's unlikely that a random kid is just going to buy a collector pack just out of nowhere because of how expensive they are, and the fact that those packs are marketed as you get these if you are wanting something special.
Got it. Yeah,
So
that
I
makes a
think
lot of
that at least,
sense.
but
That's good.
the conspiracies that are going around, because with the last set there was a subset of serialized cards. Um, the most sought after was a card called Ragavan, and there were 500 copies of it. And Star City Games opened 001 out of 500 on the Ragavan, and people went crazy about the fact that they did that. And it's like you have to understand, Star City are the equivalent of Veruca Salt's dad just opening packs all day. Like, they're opening so much more than everyone else. At some point, they're going to get these good hits. But I have said on Twitter and stuff before, if Star City open the One Ring, there are like 10 Facebook groups I'm just leaving because they will become unusable from just the amount of conspiracy theories going around.
Yeah, that's funny.
Um,
That's really funny. Yeah, I get it.
And one other thing, it's not even just money that's being offered on this card, because obviously there is publicity around it. I will say, if whoever opens this card is a content creator in any way, there's no way they should just be selling it. They should be milking this. Like, if you do sell it like Cassius Marsh, you should be tying him into, okay, you're doing 10, well, take this price and you're doing 10 videos for my channel, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're trying to grow an audience in any way, this is going to be amazing. One of the companies that have seen this, it's a card grading company called Premier Card Grading. I'd never heard of them before. The reason I'd never heard of them was they're based in New Zealand. So obviously their primary market, like people who get their cards graded with them, are people who just don't want to ship them to the US. People who'll say, I want my card graded. I know that Premier Card is never going to be PSA, it's never going to be Beckett, whatever, but I don't want to ship it from New Zealand to the States. I just want to have it done here. Now, obviously, New Zealand is where they filmed all of the Lord of the Rings movies. So Premier Card Grading have said they've got a promotion running for at least a few months after the set comes out. Whoever opens or is in current ownership of the One Ring, if they choose to get it graded with Premier Card Grading, they'll grade it for free. They will also fly the person out to New Zealand, pay for 2 days stay in a hotel for them, and arrange a trip around these filming sets of Lord of the Rings, which are still up in New Zealand. It's a huge tourist part of New Zealand. Is Hobbiton. The whole Shire is basically still up in New Zealand. You can go and walk around it. So they will fly people out and give them this tour and pay for a few days, as long as they use their grading company to grade the One Ring, because they're so heavily tied to New Zealand.
Somehow, I mean, a really nice, cute publicity stunt, great value, but I gotta believe they're probably going to go with the $1 million instead.
Probably, but I mean, grading it with this company doesn't mean it's not worth $1 million. Like,
Well,
I
but
know,
it might be to Dave and Adams who gets to make basically the qualifications on how they want that
sure,
card in their
but
hands, right?
sure, but
Um,
if David Adams don't want it, there's going to be someone else who'd pay $1 million for it. And remember, if you grade a card, it's not graded forever. If the person who opens it does this thing with Premier Grading and then sells the card to David Adams for $1 million, or to Cassius Marsh for however much he wants to pay, you can take a pair of pliers to it. You can get it out of a graded case. If you
yeah,
want, If they want it ungraded, they can take it out. If they want it graded by Beckett, they can send it to Beckett and say to Beckett, take this out of the case, put it in one of yours. It's not final.
Right. Yeah. And I, again, not grading and stuff, I always have an intrinsic fear of this concept of breaking open a slab. So, but
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
never had the experience of knowing how easy or difficult it is to do.
Yeah, if you know what you're doing, you can do it fairly easily without damaging the card, but you do have to be careful, and obviously on a $1 million card, you want to be real careful.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
All right, Dave, I think you had some more things you want to talk about. So what's next on the list?
Yeah, so Dan, I just wanted you to talk about, I know you did a video on this and I was looking at, but I wanted you to talk about the prize packs again.
Okay.
I don't have them. I don't own them. Somebody, my set
Yeah.
gal has talked about them being a league promo kind of set or something
Right.
like that. And I guess there's maybe two different series, but then is there overlap? Is there going to be a third? Does this set ever get completed? Is there a known beginning and end? Talk to me about this whole prize pack
Okay.
set thing.
So first of all, league promos means that they're only given out at Pokemon Leagues or Pokemon League related events. So they can be given out as prizes or participation for League Cups, League Challenges, or some places do it just for showing up to their leagues if they get enough. Because a lot of what people are doing is depending on how many Pokemon send them. In terms of it being what exactly they are, inside the pack,
Well,
it's
wait, so
cards from.
wait. So
Yeah,
are these league promos, are these prize packs only supposed to be coming out at these league events?
yes.
Okay, good.
If you
Now,
if you see people selling them, obviously, if people go to the leagues or they win them in the tournaments, people are allowed to sell them. If you see someone selling 170 of them, that's a league leader who is selling them when they shouldn't be, basically.
okay, okay.
So, what's actually in the packs is their cards from sets or Blackstar promos. They're existing cards, they just have a new special stamp on them. I've got some here, actually, one second. So, there'll be a nice picture on screen, but for you to see, David, you see this symbol here?
Yes.
That's the Play Pokemon logo. So that's the logo associated with Pokemon events. So the only difference is on these cards, they have that symbol on the cards in the packs. In terms of whether it's a set that will be finished and, the different series, like you mentioned. So with Series 1 of the prize packs, there was about 200 different cards total that you could get. This included or some cards that'd be foil and non-foil versions. And then when we moved on to Series 2, it rotated some of it. There was an overlap. So it was all of the cards from, I think it was Sword and Shield, Rebel Clash, Darkness Ablaze, Vivid Voltage, and Champion's Path. Those stopped being in Series 2. And then there were a few more sets added on, which was, I think, Fusion Strike, Brilliant Stars. Maybe just Fusion Strike and Brilliant Stars, possibly Astral Radiance anyway. They added those on at the end. It's to do with tournament legality, basically. All of the ones that had the D mark dropped off, and then the Fs were added on. So likely what will happen, they've said there's going to be a new set every 6 months. So likely what will happen is that with set 3, all of the ones with the E regulation mark will drop out. We'll start adding some Gs in. The Fs that were in Series 2 will probably be in Series 3 as well. Don't know that for 100%. That's likely what's going to happen. In terms of saying, will this set ever be complete? Not exactly, because it is an ongoing thing that they're doing, but they are variants from sets. So, like now that we're on to Series 2, you can say if you look, Series 1 had variants from those first 4 sets. You can, and that's what I'm doing when I'm trying to pick them. I'm focusing on those cards that were only in Series 1 for now, because you can say, I have all of them from Sword and Shield, I have all of them from Rebel Clash. And then as it goes on, when set 2 stops being given out, if you can then obviously see what gets reprinted in set 3 again. But for each individual set, you can say, okay, I have all of those for that set. They're not likely to print any more for that set, but it will just be an ongoing thing where every set, every Premier Pack set, Play Promo set, is dropping off like 4 old sets, adding 4 new sets on to the pool that they pick cards up from. It's not every card from a set. It's a selection of cards that will be, helpful to the players, basically.
There are no numbers on these cards, Dan. I know they're
Yeah,
from regular sets, so they'll have numbers. But
yeah.
other than the Play Pokemon promo stamp, there's no numbers to indicate that they're one, two,
No,
three, four, five of this
the
prize pack
only
set. Correct?
correct. The only difference is that logo, and then the cards that were in both set one and set two are identical between set one and set two. So I know like, a lot of the Eeveelutions, the V's were printed in set one and set two, so you wouldn't need a set one and a set two because it's the same card.
And when you talk about this letter, oh, we're going to drop out the D's and we're going to move to the
Yeah,
E's or drop out the F's. What is that a letter? Again, that's not a letter that's on the cards. That's just
no,
your talking.
that is a letter that's on the cards. So in Japan, they started doing this a while back. They started from A, and we actually started over here from D. But it's a way of we talked before about rotation in tournaments where they do a cut off rather than just saying all of these sets, rather than just saying battle styles onwards is what you can use. Now they'll say if a card has an E or later, so if it's E, F, G, whatever onwards, those are the cards you can use. The only time you can use a D card is if it got reprinted, but that's something that more experienced tournament players would look up. So they're just making it easier for people playing in their first tournaments to say, okay, this has a D, I know I can't use that. This has an E or an F, I know I can use that one.
But
And
Dan, those letters aren't on the cards, are they?
yes, they are. They are. If you look at
Where
any
are they
card,
on the cards?
I mean, I'll
What?
show I'll show you right now, and I'll put one on the screen. Right in the bottom left here, right next to the set symbol. I don't know if that's showing up with K. So this is a card from Paldea Evolved. This one has a G on it. So every card since Sword and Shield has had a letter in the bottom left of the card, and that's what
Okay.
you look at to say is it legal in tournaments. So that's what they're using to do the cut-offs between series of these prize packs. They've said each series is going to last about 6 months. Series 1 lasted a much shorter amount of time because they were delayed in getting it out, but Series 2 is going to be 6 months total, then Series 3 will be 6 months.
Dan, am I the only one in the world that doesn't know that there's letters on these cards and what the letters are meant to stand for? You can say yes. I just want to understand.
No, I imagine a lot of collectors don't pay attention to them. Like some of them might have seen them but didn't really know what they were for. It's a thing that is fully for the players.
Okay. And Dan, how many cards are in Series 1? Do we know?
So in series, there are spreadsheets that people have put together, but Pokemon have never released an official spreadsheet or an official checklist. But the spreadsheets that people have put together, it comes out to, I'd have to find it. It comes out to something like 170, 180, I think, including different foil types or foil and non-foil. And I think it's about 50 cards were exclusive to set one, and then the rest were also in set two. I'm currently working on it for myself, trying to put together special like lists to show exactly what was only in set one and what got reprinted. I'm working on it at the moment, but because Pokemon hasn't revealed anything official, it's difficult to put it together.
How many cards are in a prize pack?
So there's 6 cards total, 2 of which will be foil, 4 of which are non-foil. Out of the 4 non-foils, 1 is always a basic energy. The basic
Okay.
energies also have, the symbols on them, the play Pokemon symbols.
All right. I mean, I have this feeling like this is going to be one of the most difficult sets for me to put together.
Oh,
Hopefully that's not
it's
the
going to be
case.
a nightmare. Yeah, like I'm not
I
going to
mean,
sugarcoat it. It is going to be difficult.
because there's not even a real checklist.
Yeah, I've said, and I've talked to some people who either work at or have influence in Pokemon, and obviously Pokemon like the idea of the kid they get their prize packet league and you don't know what's in it and people have that excitement. And I said I think a very good trade off would be now that set two is out, give us the definitive checklist for set one. So people are getting set two at their leagues, they don't know what's in it, they're excited. When set three comes out, give us the definitive checklist for set two. I think if Pokemon could come out and do that, that would be a fair trade off because it means it's not stopping, the kids at league having that excitement or players having the excitement of not knowing what they're going to get in their packs, but it is allowing people who actually want to collect these sets to have that information at some point. I think that would be a really nice trade-off if they did that.
And I mean, most of the time they really do have checklists for, even if it's on Pokemon.com or something, right? Of the different card sets and all that stuff.
For almost everything, yeah. But for this one, they've decided they didn't want to do that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you for the explanation. I just don't even know where to get started with this one, so it always concerns me. So.
Yeah, it is. It's basically the first set. I know there's 4 cards that are expensive from set 1, which is Charizard V and V Max and Pikachu V and V Max. You know, to the surprise of no one, those cards were only in set 1, so they are expensive.
Okay. Dan, just one more card topic today.
Yeah.
I know we've gone a long time, but tell me about metal cards. You know, I always read about metal cards, and I know there's been a proliferation of counterfeit or non-real metal cards that are out there. I'm not talking about any of those. So I'm talking about legitimately issued, Pokemon issued metal cards, and I'm not talking about just the look of metal, like a texture look. I'm talking about, I guess, actual
metal,
yeah. I've never held one because, again, I'm not all the way there, and I haven't opened if there's one in a UPC collection box or something, or premium collection, I haven't opened it. So how many metal cards are you aware of that Pokemon has legitimately issued and are out there at this point in time?
So in English, for actual trading card game cards, there are 4. So the UPC a while back, that was the Sword and Shield era UPC, had base set Pikachu and base set Charizard reprinted in gold. It was base gold and it had color printed on top of it, but it was reprints of base set Pikachu and Charizard. And then recently there was an Arceus premium collection, which had Arceus V and Arceus V Star as metal cards. Those, the color was a lot closer to the original card because Arceus is a colorless Pokemon, and it was printed on like a silver core rather than a gold core. So it looks a lot closer to the original card, but those are the 4 metal TCG cards in English that I know of. I don't think there was any others previously. Obviously, if you look at metal cards, people will show you the Burger King cards from the 90s. There was 6 of those, but they looked more like a gold bar type thing with a Pokemon on it. Obviously, those were, I don't even know if they were fully metal. They might be in plastic with a metal plating or something. I at least think the metal cards are fully metal, but I don't own any of those Burger King cards, so I'm not 100% sure if they're metal throughout.
You'll post in the video, because I know I have the Charizard and
I'll
the
make sure the
V-Max,
pictures of
that
I'll
the
make sure the
first two
pictures of the
don't even
products.
sound familiar, so I'd like to make sure I understand what that Pikachu and Charizard base set ones came out of.
Yeah, I'll make sure I have pictures of the product and the cards themselves.
What was it called again?
It was the Ultra Premium Collection for Celebrations, was the name of it. It came with there was a fully gold Pikachu and Pokeball promo. They were just regular cards. They were just full gold. And then it came with the 2 metal cards as well.
There's 2 metal cards inside it?
Yeah, it's the two metal cards of base Charizard and base Pikachu, plus 2 other regular Black Star promos.
Okay, got it.
But I'll make sure we have pictures up and everything.
Okay. Dan, do you have anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think we've hit a lot of stuff this week. So if you have anything else you want to say, then yep, you can finish it off, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, so I want to play a game, so that way anybody that doesn't want to be here anymore, they can just leave. Just go about your lives. There's no reason.
We've talked about the Pokemon stuff. Dave's now just going to play a game, and I'm going to sit here and indulge him. And you can choose if you also want to indulge him or not.
That's really nice. Thank you. It reminds me of the end of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where if you watch all the way past the credits, they're like, he just keeps saying, "Why are you still sitting in the whatever movie room in the theater? Get out, go. Why are you still here?" So, okay, Dan, this is just basically true or false. All right, and you're welcome to play it with me next week if you'd like, but that's up to you, because I know how busy you are with all of the work jobs you have and this full-time influencer thing. So, I'm going to give you an example of how it's played, and then you can, and that'll give you a feel, and then we can go right into the real game. Okay.
Okay.
All right, Dan. So typically it's going to be about me and my life, but not at the very first one. It's just an example. So, Dan, is it true or false that cats, when falling, always land on their feet?
I think that's true. Yeah. I'm
All right,
sure
that
there are
actually
I'm sure there
what?
are exceptions to it, but I think for the most part it's generally accepted as true. I think you can make a cat not fall on its feet, but I think if it has it's there's something to do with a certain height, I think, but I think it's generally accepted they fall on their feet. If you want to
All
get
right.
fully scientific, it's false because if you drop them from too low, they don't have time to turn around or something. But just don't drop cats.
This is why Trainer Deck A and Trainer Deck B we
It
only limit to
is,
10 seconds. So,
yeah, it's always a
Dan, it is generally true, and that is because the cats have an inner ear mechanism for balancing them in the middle of a fall. That's why.
yeah.
Okay, ready? We're gonna play now for the real thing. These are situations in my life, Dan. They may or may not be real. So here we
Okay,
go. Situation number one. So I when I used to work at Merrill Lynch and I was located in California before I moved to Vegas. Worked at we used to have events at the Oakland Coliseum where the company would sponsor baseball games. Our attendance at a baseball game between the San Francisco Giants and the Oakland A's. And so one time at one of those games, when we were doing a tailgate in the parking lot, uh, I was scalping tickets,
okay,
meaning that I was in the parking lot, and we had extra tickets that we'd able to maintain for the family. Not all the kids were going. We decided to try to sell them. So while doing that, the police came over and did not like what I was doing, and actually arrested me, which basically handcuffed me, took me to a tent in the back, and I was formally arrested, which is the only um, mark, I guess, on my blemish on my record, I would say.
okay. I'm gonna guess false on that one, and I'm gonna guess that maybe the start of the story is true, but the police just asked you to stop doing it rather than you being formally arrested. Would be my guess.
Okay, yeah, that is correct, Dan. That is false. That was actually my son who was doing that,
Oh,
and
really?
at the game, yes, and they were they he was not we were taken in the back, and he was lectured very loudly, but it did not negatively impact him in any way. Thank
Okay.
goodness, Dan. Although
Yeah.
they did pull their weapons, it was kind of scary at the time I was there. I went to bail them out. Okay, Dan. Situation number two. You'll get the hang of this, and you can quiz me next week.
Okay.
Situation number two involves a job that I used to have. So, did I have this job or not? When I was located down in Los Angeles for not that length of time, but at the Hollywood Awards, the Academy Awards, you have celebrities that sit in the seats while the broadcast is going on, obviously. Now, as the broadcast is going on, very often those celebrities have to go to the restroom or for some reason leave their seats. And
Yeah.
so they employ folks like myself as a seat filler.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I was actually at a few of those awards as a seat filler, filling in for celebrities who had to exit their seats during the broadcast.
Okay. I'll go with true on that one because I know that seat filling is a real job. I've heard of people doing it before that they have to not show an empty seat on TV. So I know that the job exists. So I'll guess true. I'll guess that you did do that for a while.
All right, Dan. That is a seat filling is a job that exists, Dan, but I never did it.
Okay.
And actually, Stephanie, my wife, did that job. So
Okay.
I inserted myself into her character, and in this situation, Dan, you were wrong,
All
which is
right.
perfect because it sets us up for the global final, which is the third of the
Tie break.
three
Well, 1-1.
tiebreaker. That's right.
Yeah. There we
Okay.
go.
So recently, in fact, just this past week, a great fan favorite in the World Wrestling Federation of years gone past passed away, and his name was the Iron Sheik, as was his character.
Yeah.
And as I grew up in the late 70s and early 80s, there were tremendous wrestling matches between Sergeant Slaughter, who was the American hero, and Iron Sheik, who was the Iranian villain. And you could not get enough of this stuff. And those guys ended up wrestling Hulk Hogan and others as their careers went on. So
Yeah.
it was kind of the real wonderful era of wrestling. So it reminded me watching him this week when he passed that one time after a very tough match between him and Sergeant Slaughter, as a kid, I decided to emulate one of Sergeant Slaughter's moves on the Iron Sheik. And I elevated myself on a table in my kitchen, and I basically flew myself towards a friend of mine on the floor, and my friend rolled out at that very same time, and they ended up breaking my arm in 2 places after watching a wonderful Sergeant Slaughter Iron Sheik match.
Well, as we discussed a couple of episodes ago, I do have a brother who's only a couple of years out in age from me. So as someone who has been on both ends of the walls of Jericho, I will guess that that's true, and you definitely tried to emulate wrestling moves.
Yeah, Dan, that is not true, but I appreciate
Okay.
you guessing right. And that is just because, Dan, I was probably too afraid of my own shadow. I loved watching that stuff, but get on a table and fly down, Dan. I've always been a little smarter than that. I'm just not that. I'm not that careless. So, Dan, today you lost on True or False, but I appreciate you listening to some of my quirky stories, and thank you for indulging me and those who stayed with us for this. Why? I asked you to leave a long time ago.
None of your stories were true, so maybe you just haven't done anything exciting. Maybe you just haven't
Nothing.
steal everyone else's stories.
Exactly. Zero. You're right. I thought a lot about stuff to be true. I had nothing. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, I think that is definitely enough from us for today. I can't imagine many people are still here. If you are, thank you. Don't forget to follow us on the new social accounts, which are linked below. And yep, that's it. We'll see you again next week.
Bye-bye.
I would like to say a huge thank you to everyone who chooses to support me on Patreon. If you'd like to get involved, help support the channel, and see some behind-the-scenes content, click on the link in the description. Thanks again.
Thanks for watching. Check out some more videos right here.
And don't forget to subscribe for more awesome Pokemon content from DJ Gigabyte.
Gotta catch 'em all!